All right, today we're diving into the absolutely epic story of Napoleon Bonaparte. I mean, think about it. This is a guy whose ambition was so massive, it took him from a little rocky island all the way to ruling a continent, only to see it all come crashing down. So let's get into it. Just listen to that. One day my name will rise beyond these walls. This wasn't some grand proclamation. Not yet. This was the quiet promise of a kid who was getting made fun of in a French military school. You can just feel it, right? That single sentence tells you everything you need to know about the fire that was building inside him. So you have to ask, where does an ambition like that even come from? Well, the story doesn't start in Paris or in the heart of France. Nope. It begins on this rugged little island, Corsica, where Napoleon was from day one an outsider. Okay, so let's break this down. It's like all the ingredients for a perfect storm, really. First, he's born in Corsica, which had just become French territory. So to the mainland French, he's not one of them. He's always the other guy. Then you've got his mom, Letizia, who sounds like she was tough as nails, instilling this iron will in him. But then he goes off to military school. And what happens? The other kids just mock him mercilessly for his accent. All of that feeling of never quite fitting in, that's what lit the fuse. It created this absolutely ferocious drive to show every single one of them just how wrong they were. And boy, did he get his chance. It comes at a place called Toulon in 1793. You have to remember, France is in total chaos at this point. The revolution is a mess, the republic is about to fall apart, and then this young, unknown artillery officer shows up, Napoleon. He uses his incredible mind for artillery and just crushes the resistance. It's not just a win, it's a statement. For the very first time, the people in power in France turned their heads and went, "Who is this guy?" So, Toulon was the spark. But what comes next? Well, that spark just erupts into a raging inferno. Napoleon is about to go from being that promising young officer to an actual living legend. And his rise is just meteoric. Look at this Italian campaign. He takes command of this beaten-down, demoralized army and turns them into a juggernaut. And he does it by leading from the front. At the Bridge of Lodi, he literally charges headfirst into enemy fire. Can you imagine the loyalty that inspires in your men? Then at Arcole, he grabs a flag and leads the charge himself. These weren't just tactical victories. He was building his own myth, piece by piece. By the time he got back to France, he wasn't just a general, he was a hero. So what do you do after a victory like that? You go to Egypt, of course. Now, the military part of this campaign was, let's just say it was a mixed bag. But Napoleon was a genius at spinning things. He didn't frame it just as a conquest. No, this was a mission of science and enlightenment. He brought a whole bunch of scholars with him and, get this, they're the ones who found the Rosetta Stone. It was a massive PR win. So even when the military side didn't go perfectly, his reputation, his prestige, it just kept growing. Okay, so he's not just a general anymore. He's not just a hero. He's the most famous man in France. And now he's ready to make his real move, to grab the ultimate prize and literally change the fate of an entire continent. And look how fast this happens. It's just breathtaking. He gets back to France in 1799, sees the chaos, and just takes over. A coup d'etat. He becomes first consul. But that's not enough. Oh no. Fast forward to 1804. He's in Notre Dame Cathedral. The Pope is there to crown him emperor. And in this moment of just pure, unbelievable audacity, Napoleon takes the crown from the Pope and puts it on his own head. The message couldn't be clearer. God didn't make me emperor, I did. And then, Austerlitz. This was his masterpiece, his Mona Lisa of battle. He's facing the combined armies of two other empires, Austria and Russia. He should have been crushed. Instead, he lays this perfect trap and in one day completely shatters them. This is it. This is the peak. After Austerlitz, Napoleon Bonaparte wasn't just the emperor of France. He was, for all intents and purposes, the master of Europe. But you know how the saying goes, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. And that same incredible, unchecked ambition that got him to the top, well, it's about to lead him into his single greatest mistake. The mistake that would crack the very foundations of his empire. The year is 1812. He puts together the Grand Army, the biggest army Europe had ever seen, and he marches on Russia. And he gets to Moscow. He takes it. But nobody's there. The city is empty. It's been abandoned. And then the Russians set it on fire. It's this completely hollow, eerie victory, and it's a terrifying sign of what's about to happen. Because then, the Russian winter arrives, and the retreat begins. Honestly, it's one of the most horrific stories in all of military history. The slide says it all. Snow, cold, starvation. This wasn't a retreat. It was a death march, plain and simple. The numbers are just staggering. He went in with this enormous army, and only a tiny fraction, a handful of survivors, made it back. They weren't beaten by an army. They were destroyed by the weather. And with that, the myth of Napoleon, the invincible genius, it was shattered. The empire was officially cracking. And the second the rest of Europe saw he was vulnerable, they pounced. It was like sharks smelling blood in the water. They all ganged up on him at the Battle of Nations and finally defeated him. Napoleon, the guy who had dominated Europe, had to give up his crown. They sent him into exile on this tiny little island called Elba. And for literally any other person in history, that would be it. Story over. But we're talking about Napoleon here. And of course, his story has one last, unbelievable act, a shocking comeback, one final roll of the dice, and then the final crash. So he escapes. He actually escapes from Elba and lands back in France. The new king, of course, sends an army to stop him, to arrest him. And this is the moment. Everything comes down to this one question. Will his own men, the soldiers who loved him, actually shoot their emperor? And what does Napoleon do? In this incredible act of pure guts and political genius, he walks right up to the line of soldiers, opens his coat, and basically says, "If you want to kill your emperor, here I am." And they don't shoot. They can't. They break down. They start crying, shouting, "Vive l'empereur! Long live the emperor!" It's just unbelievable. His sheer force of personality won the day, one last time. But it wasn't enough. The rest of Europe wasn't going to let him come back. They united against him one last time. And at a place called Waterloo, it all fell apart. It rained, turning the whole field to mud, which completely messed up his famous cannon strategy. His last great gamble failed. As the sun went down on that battlefield, it went down on the age of Napoleon for good. And this time, they made sure there would be no encore, no escape. They exiled him to St. Helena, one of the most remote, lonely little islands on the planet, a rock in the middle of the Atlantic. And that's where he died. The man who made Europe tremble spent his final years as a prisoner, just dictating his life story, until the end came in 1821. So when you look back, how do you even sum up a guy like Napoleon? His legacy is just this massive contradiction. On one side, you have an undisputed military genius, a brilliant reformer whose legal code, the Napoleonic Code, is still the basis for law in tons of countries today. But on the other side, you have a tyrant, a man whose limitless ambition plunged Europe into almost constant war, killing millions. He was a builder and a destroyer, all at the same time. In the end, maybe it's impossible to label him a simple hero or a simple villain. He was more like a force of nature, like a hurricane or an earthquake, that just reshaped the world. And his story leaves us with this huge, timeless question. Is a life like his a shining example of human potential, of what one person can achieve? Or is it a terrifying warning about what happens when ambition has no brakes? It's something to think about, isn't it?